At our family reunion, my Aunt Linda, with a glass of cheap Chardonnay in one hand and a lifetime of judgment in her heart, looked right at me and asked the one question my entire family had been too smug, too sure of themselves to ever ask. "So," she said, her voice cutting through the picnic table chatter, "I heard a little rumor. Something about an $890,000 consulting contract." And in that second, the entire universe of my family just stopped. The air vanished. My parents, who had spent a decade crafting my narrative as the disappointment, went wider than the paper plates. And all I had to do was smile. This is the story of the quietest, most devastating revenge I ever got. And I didn't even plan it. Let me paint the family portrait for you. My family is traditional. A family of doctors, engineers, and accountants. Success was a tangible, measurable thing. A degree on a wall, a title on a business card, a car in a driveway. Who was a checklist. And my parents, Robert and Elaine, were the proud curators of this museum of achievement. Then there was me, Alex. I didn't want the checklist. My brain didn't work in straight lines. It worked in ecosystems, in patterns, in solving puzzles no one else could even see. In college, while my older brother Mark was acing his pre-med courses, I was teaching myself advanced data analytics, coding, and digital system architecture. For fun. I dropped out senior year. Not because I was failing, but because the startup offered me a real-world problem that was more compelling than any final exam. To my family, it was an unthinkable scandal. Dropping out was an irreversible stain. I remember the intervention dinner. The clink of forks was like ticking clocks. My father, not looking at me, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "We just want to understand, Alex. What is the plan? Consulting isn't a job. It's what you do between jobs." My mother, her voice a symphony of worry. "People will think we didn't provide. That we failed you." And Mark, dear brother Mark, with that infuriating, condescending grin. "Hey, maybe he can consult on my website someday. I'll pay him in pizza." The message was carved into my bones. You are a living disappointment. Your choices are a direct reflection of our failure. So I made a decision that night, sitting there, my appetite gone. My truth was too fragile, too unconventional for them to handle. I would stop giving it to them. I would go radio silent. The silent treatment became my armor. At holidays, I'd give vague, non-committal answers. "How's work, Alex?" "Oh, projects here and there. Keeping busy." "Are you making ends meet?" "I get by." I'd see the glance between my parents, the sad, resigned shake of my father's head, my mother's overly bright. "Well, as long as you're happy," which really meant, "We've accepted your life is a tragedy." Meanwhile, my real life was exploding. That startup got acquired. My share was life-changing. I didn't buy a flashy car. I invested in myself. I built a reputation as the person you call when a multi-million-dollar tech project is on fire. I became a ghost in the machine of big business. My contracts weren't yearly. They were for specific, complex, high-stakes solutions. And my fee reflected that. I bought a beautiful, modest house in cash. I traveled the world, working from beaches and mountaintops. I had freedom they couldn't comprehend, and loneliness they couldn't see. Because every family text thread celebrating Mark's new promotion, every photo of my parents beaming next to his new BMW, it was 1,000 tiny paper cuts. My success was a secret garden I tended alone, while they stood outside, pitying the barren plot they imagined was there. The antagonist here wasn't a mustache-twirling villain. It was the certainty, their smug, unshakable certainty about who I was. It was my Aunt Linda who once patted my hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetie. Walmart is always hiring cashiers." It was the collective family narrative that had hardened into fact. Alex is the creative, flighty, struggling one. They didn't need to bully me actively anymore. The story was already written. I was just living in their footnote. The turning point came about a year before the reunion. My father had a minor health scare. Sitting in that sterile hospital room, the beep of the monitors like a metronome, he looked at me. Not through me at me. He said, "Alex, when I'm gone, you'll need to look after your mother. I know, your situation isn't like Mark's, but maybe he can help you find something stable. Promise me you'll let him help you." In that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound, hollow sadness. This man, my own father, was facing his mortality, and his last great worry was that his son was a helpless child. My secret success wasn't just a luxury anymore. It had become a wall between me and any genuine connection with my own family. I left the hospital that day, sat in my car, and just screamed. A raw, guttural sound that had been compressed inside me for a decade. The weight of their pity was going to crush me. I had two choices: blow up the entire relationship with the truth, or live forever as a ghost in my own life. I decided on a third option. I would live my truth so fully that if the moment to reveal it ever came, I would be unshakable. I would know who I was even if they never did. The reunion. The annual festival of comparison. It was at a lakeside park. The smell of charcoal, the shriek of cousins, the low hum of adult conversation that was really just a subtle competition. I was in my uniform. Nice jeans, a simple button-up. Mark was in polo shirt with a tiny logo, holding court about market volatility. My parents were in their element, orbiting him. I was talking to my cousin Sarah, who's actually cool, when I felt a presence. A cloud of floral perfume and judgment. At Linda. Alex, you rested. Been on vacation? Something like that, Aunt Linda. Just working remotely. The digital nomad thing, she said, as if describing a child's lemonade stand. Well, as long as the Wi-Fi holds, right? She chuckled at her own joke. Then her eyes, sharp and bird-like, narrowed. You know, I was playing bridge with Margaret Fletcher last week. You remember her? Her son Peter is in, what is it you do again? Tech stuff. I felt a familiar tension creep up my neck. Something like that. Well, Linda's voice lifted, aiming to draw a crowd. Margot was going on and on about Peter landing some big deal. And then she said, but it's nothing like that contract your nephew Alex landed. $890,000. Peter was in awe. Time didn't just slow. It fractured. I saw the words leave her mouth. I saw them travel through the humid summer air. I saw them hit my mother's ears first. Her smile didn't fade. It froze like plaster cracking. Her eyes, wide and confused, flicked to me. Then my father. He was mid-sip of lemonade. He choked. Not dramatically, but a small wet catch in his throat. His hand lowered the cup slowly, deliberately, as if the weight of it had suddenly tripled. He stared at the red checkered tablecloth, his brow furrowed, processing a math problem that refused to solve. Mark's monologue died. He looked at Linda, then at me, his head tilting like a dog hearing a high-pitched noise. The circle of conversation around us had collapsed into a vacuum. All that was left was Aunt Linda's triumphant, oblivious smile. She thought she was complimenting me. And the deafening, roaring silence of my parents. My revenge wasn't in my planning. It was in my non-reaction. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I didn't puff out my chest. I simply let the grenade that Aunt Linda had thrown lie there, smoking at their feet. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my own drink, meeting my mother's shocked gaze over the rim of the cup. My heart wasn't pounding with anxiety anymore. It was beating a slow, steady, powerful drum of absolute calm. This is it, I thought. This is the moment. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. An eternity in family time. Aunt Linda, finally sensing the tectonic plates shifting beneath her, faltered. I mean, that's what Marco said. It is you, right, Alex? The cybersecurity consultant? She was very specific. All eyes were on me. The universe held its breath. I set my cup down. The click on the picnic table was absurdly loud. Oh, I said, my voice perfectly even, conversational. The Fletcher project. Yeah, that was last quarter. Really interesting problem they had. Peter's a good guy. The confirmation was so casual, so offhand, it was more devastating than any boast. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Not in joy. In sheer, unadulterated shock. A decade of narrative disintegrated behind her eyes. Last quarter, she whispered, the words barely audible. My father finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Not at the struggling son he imagined, but at the stranger in front of him who had just quoted a number larger than his lifetime of savings. His face was a masterpiece of confusion, dawning realization, and something that looked painfully like shame. You've been doing this. For how long? He managed. About 8 years, Dad, I said softly. The big contract started about 5 years ago. Mark found his voice, but it was a squeak. 890,000 for one project. It was a 12-week engagement. I said, nodding. Complex ecosystem migration. They had a budget for 7 figures I came in under. I said it like I was discussing the weather. And that was the final exquisite twist of the knife. My nonchalance was the ultimate proof. A liar would have been triumphant. A braggart would have been loud. My calm, matter-of-fact detail was the hallmark of someone who lived in this reality every single day. The family reunion unraveled. The carefully staged play was over. My parents physically withdrew, huddling together in a whispered, frantic conversation, casting shell-shocked glances my way. Mark became sullen and quiet, his trophy suddenly feeling very plastic. Aunt Linda, realizing she'd been the catalyst for an atomic family event, fluttered off, pretending to be needed at the dessert table. And I finally felt it. The release. The validation. It wasn't a shout of triumph. It was a deep, full-body exhale I'd been holding for 10 years. The invisible weight I'd carried, the weight of their low expectations, simply vanished. It dissolved in the face of their stunned, silent, irreversible knowledge. They had been wrong. Spectacularly, utterly wrong. And they all now knew it in their bones. In the days that followed, there were awkward calls, stilted conversations. My mother cried, a messy mix of apology and hurt that I hadn't trusted them. My father was quiet, then gradually, respectfully began to ask genuine questions about my work. The relationship isn't magically fixed. You can't erase a decade of dismissed dreams with one revelation. But the dynamic is forever changed. I am no longer a character in their story. I am the author of my own, and they have been reluctantly, humbly granted read-only access. The revenge wasn't in the number. It was in the silence that followed it. That profound, humiliated, earth-shattering silence where every past comment, every patronizing smile, every unsolicited piece of career advice echoed back at them, naked and absurd. It was the sound of a story breaking. And in that breakage I found my freedom. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't about what you do. It's about what you know and watching the world finally catch up. If that moment of silent vindication hit you right in the soul, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It tells the YouTube algorithm to share this story with others who need to hear it. Subscribe for more tales of quiet rebellion and stunning comebacks. And I'm genuinely curious. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where your success became your best revenge? What did it feel like? Until next time, remember. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can build isn't a fortune. It's a secret. And the right moment for it to be revealed will always, always come.